Let's go.
Famous, so famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, so famous, number one, desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. I got t-shirts, so I don't care about no gold. Better, so much better, flipping incredible. Always on the show, so they know that I still got it. And I never feel sorry, yeah, top of the world. Top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world, top of the world, yeah, top of the world. When I hear him come like my fuse and then ba-bum. Later, see you later, I'm about to blow this up. You can sing or sing if you want, I know you want it. It's always kinda funny, yeah, cause you know I'm a superstar in the sky to lead you on. Haters gonna hate, it's a proof of how they love.
Hey guys, I'm Sai and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of our originally created series, My Story. This is now our third series, and as I've said many times now, what I love about this series is no matter what, everybody has got a story to tell, and today's episode is absolutely no different. And just a couple of little housekeeping things. If you prefer your podcast in video form, every single episode of My Story and all the content that we produce, you can get at youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. Please do subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. If you prefer your podcasts in audio platforms, audio form, then we're part of the Sports Social Podcast Network, the UK's first all sports podcast network. And you'll find all the content that we produce there. It's far and a plenty on many different subjects. The My Story series that we do is unique. It's slightly different to some of the other content we do, the other shows we produce. It's we take our guests through their life, their career, from their upbringing all the way to present day, as they share stories and anecdotes across the 2 seasons so far, and certainly the first few episodes of season 3. We've had actors, footballers, broadcasters, authors, filmmakers, podcasters, fighters, and more. And season 3 is already shown to be no different. The tagline is simple: real conversations with real people. It's their story in their own words. And joining me today, I'm for a real treat, as we're joined by former professional boxer and a man who's widely recognized as one of the godfathers of boxing fitness. It is Mr. Michael "Silk" Olajide. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Sai. How are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I'm excited. I got to be honest. I'm been looking forward to this ever since we spoke the other day. So I'm really interested to kind of hear your story. And I just from the the bits I've been reading and the videos I've been watching, it seems like you've got an exceptionally interesting story, which is full of ups and downs and a lot of success. So I'm kind of looking forward to really digging into that for the next hour or so. But what we like to do with this show and the guests is we take you right back to the start and kind of in your own words, tell us a little bit about, where you were born, your upbringing, those early days.
Yeah, I was born in Liverpool, England, and I remember it in sections, in very small sections, because we left when I must have been about 6 years of age. But it was my mother, my father, and my 3 other siblings, Tracy, Sandra, and David. David being the older brother, I was in the middle. And I remember it was kind of interesting because Liverpool always seemed to be great in me. Like my memory of it was in black and white. Maybe it's because I watched too much TV, And so you have all your memories are in TV, and TV was definitely black and white back then. We used to have to drop, money in the box in order to turn it on and all those things. I talk about stuff like that today with my kids, and it blows their mind. You have to put money in your box on the back of the TV for it to work. Like, yeah. We used to get milk. The birds used to come peck the caps, and you know what I mean. The whole thing. So it was wild. But so I started off early in Vancouver. I'm sorry, in Liverpool, England is where I was born and raised until I was about 6, 7 years of age. About 6 years of age, then we moved to Vancouver, Canada. And that was more or less out of necessity because my father needed to work. And there wasn't enough work for him in Liverpool. He was a professional boxer at first himself. And then, life happens and you have kids and all of a sudden you can't support everybody you need to support. So you have to take up a job. He was working at the docks in Liverpool in woodwork or something. I'm not exactly sure. But then he moved to Vancouver, and my mom and the 4 kids, we came over afterwards. We followed our dad, and that's kind of like where this story went from there. But I still have a lot of family on my mother's side in Liverpool. My dad was born in Nigeria, so it was a big jump for him to go from Nigeria to Liverpool, and he got into the boxing scene, and he did well as a boxer, I believe. And I remember when I was a kid, I wasn't in boxing. I didn't start boxing until I was about 15 years of age. But I remember when I was a kid, I remember looking up on the top of the wardrobe in my dad's bedroom, and I saw these gold boots. They were like really bright gold boots. And I remember just looking up, and they just seemed like miles away, like on another plane. I remember that's probably my clearest memory, or one of my clearest memories of Liverpool, was seeing those shoes. And I had no idea that that was going to be in the future for me, but it ended up being, as a professional boxer, it ended up being my future as well. I guess I could have been a wrestler too, because the gold boots.
Yeah, absolutely. Those early days. What sort of interests did you have then? Because you mentioned you didn't start boxing until you were sort of 15. Yeah. What were your early interests as a child?
As a child, I don't really recall having very many interests. It's like I was just being, you know what I mean? Like I watched a lot of things. I took in a lot of information. I may have been like an average talker. I mean, I talked smack. I know my brothers and sisters used to get really irritated with me. And my mom used to say that I would just irritate anybody that after a while. So I should, I got to learn to curtail that. But my mother let me know that. And then my brothers and sisters I had one incident. I remember Easter, and we used to have those big chocolate airplanes. You'd have a big bunny, or you'd have a chocolate airplane. I had one of those chocolate airplanes given to me as a gift. And my brother thought he was going to get back at me. So I must have been like maybe 3 or so, and he just kept on telling me how the plane is going to fly. All you got to do is just throw it. And it was this big chocolate plane. And he convinced me to the point. And my brother was just one of those people. He'd do the same thing. And I threw it and off the top stairs. And of course, it broke into pieces, and I was upset. I remember all little things like that really, as a kid, stand out in your mind, because in a way it's trauma. So I let my brother know, even to this very day, you were the first one to give me trauma. It's not the last, and maybe not the greatest, but you were the first. So thank you.
Do you were you particularly close to your siblings in those early days?
I believe I was. Yeah. When we were all living together, I mean, it was very. I started going to a Catholic private school, and my older brother and older sister were already there. My younger sister Tracy was not in school yet, so we had a lot in common, and we kind of got around. But we were always like, my mom dressed us similar. Me and my brother similar, and my sister and her younger sister similar. My younger sister similar, and so I think we had a lot in common. But when we moved from Liverpool to Vancouver, my mother and father divorced, and then I didn't see my older brother and older sister for many years. Like so that was strange, but life is about adapting, and that's kind of what you do immediately. You just, all of a sudden that happens, and someone's out of your life that was in your life and that you loved, was a part of your, is a very part of your like chemical makeup, and all of a sudden they're not there. But you have to survive, you have to live, you have to carry on, and so that happened, and many other things happened.
Yeah, I think like children often, across the world, all over the place, often have to adapt to situations like that where parents split up, or traumatic events happen to different varying degrees. And I think I'm always amazed at how resilient children are, and how they just they just adapt and they roll with the punches, for lack of a better term. And it's like it always is. I find that it's almost like children cope with things like loss and difficult situations. They cope better than adults. I think sometimes they kind of just get on with it, and they don't focus on it too much.
Well, I think all that comes from the fact that if they do focus on it that much, they don't have I guess the mental awareness. Like, you don't have the tools, you haven't developed the tools to deal with it. But sometimes as adults, we have tools, and then we stay in it too deep as well.
Yes.
And like you're saying, like with trauma, the best, you can acknowledge it, but you always have to work your way out of it, or be doing other things. And I've always said myself, I mean, it's kind of like the dinosaurs. You adapt or die. If you do not adapt, then you know what I mean. The other side of it is not very good. So it's almost like self-preservation. You have to find a way to, whether it's like giving yourself a crutch initially until you don't need that crutch anymore. Sometimes you just have to, you actually have to fatigue the issue, and then you'll find some sort of like a zen in the fatiguing of what's bothering you. And that's the only way you can get away from it. I mean, you can, again, people choose chemicals and they choose drugs and different things, and we develop bad habits and abuse ourselves in different ways like that. But I think one of the things we can do, if we once we fatigue ourselves, we're open to, like, physically fatigue ourselves, we're open to a lot more, like accepting a lot more good energy, and opening up our mind to accept healing, the efforts of healing, the benefits of healing.
Yeah, 100% for sure. So you mentioned you went to a Catholic school. Were your family religious? Growing up?
It's very interesting. I always thought not, but at the same time, I think so, because I mean, we were baptized, and once we left England, we didn't go to the church for a long time. But I do remember specifically, I guess the best schools kind of were Catholic schools at that time. Yeah. And I remember getting the cane a couple of times, but not as often as my brother. Yeah, so I can kind of like sort of weasel my way out of it, but not him. He always got the cane. And when we came to Vancouver at that point, my mother and father had split up. They divorced, and like you said, the two youngest went with my mom, and me and my sister, and my older sister and older brother went with my dad. And my mother ended up a few years later getting married again. Okay. And he was a Christian man. So I went to a Christian private school for a number of years. And so, it was an interesting journey, because you meet a lot of people. There's a lot of security there. There's a lot of warmth. And there's the other side of things too. There's always if there's night, there's day. Yeah. So there's a lot of beautiful experiences in my growing up. And I think that my mom being a Black lady, and I didn't see my dad for many years, like from 7 years of age up until maybe like 15, I saw him, I could think of twice. You know what I mean? Like, think of him twice. And not seeing my brothers and sisters growing up either. But we kind of like everybody, you try to get your foot on firm ground, and you don't understand yourself. You know nothing of yourself. But all I know is that my mom made such an effort as a single mom in that day and age, in the community we grew up in. Like, it was an all-white community. We were Black, and there was an Asian community as well in Steveston. But you're pretty much running it alone, and so it hits social norms and social differences. They just hit you differently than it would say, like, now I live in New York and there's a huge Black population here, so I don't feel outnumbered at all. I just feel everything's kind of very easy. But in Vancouver, you're growing up, and you know you're different, but people don't come at you the same way either. They don't come at you aggressively. It's a whole different feel. Like race didn't really be an issue for me in Vancouver or in Richmond until one day, it was a movie with what was it? It was Roots. Alex Haley's Roots. Yeah. So as soon as Roots came out on TV, and the N-word was the word in that, and that was the first time I ever heard that. And I was looking at these guys, these same kids that I was playing with the whole time. All of a sudden, they were kind of like they were using the N-word, and I was like, "Wow, that's kind of interesting how that works." Because just yesterday, before Kunta Kinte was running around, everyone was kind of like just all those like different things that paint a personality was just so. I mean, I love my experience in life so far. I've met so many great people. I've met, a few people, I wish I wouldn't have met, but it's all a part of that social, like that, I don't know, different
part of the journey, isn't it? It's part of the journey and making connections with different people from all over the world, different backgrounds and stuff. And I think something which I try to take from my own life at the moment, particularly, is like even negative experiences. You try and learn something from them, try and take something from them, so that even if it's a negative experience for me, I can try and turn it into a positive. It doesn't always work, but I trying to at the moment.
No, Sai, you're so right, because I that's kind of like my policy as well. I'm like, there's two types of energies in this world. There's positive energy and there's negative energy. Positive energy is something we can use immediately. People are patting you on the back and giving you things and helping you. That's an immediate boost. Negative energy takes more processing. But when people tell you you can't, and that's like negative energy. You shouldn't, you can't, you're not going to. They're holding you back either physically or emotionally, mentally. That's all well and good, but if you can see yourself past that, that's just as effective fuel as the positive. In fact, maybe even more so. Recently, I think was it yesterday, this weekend, there was I don't know if he was Grand Prix or he was a race car driver, and he's a black gentleman, and he had won, like, he's becoming really prolific in racing right now, and something happened where they put out the caution flag, and I think the last few laps they went around and they had to remain in position. Well, one of the guys had actually slipped ahead of him, and he ended up getting first place. And that's not the way it's ever done. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to hold your position you're in and finish the race how you do. And so, unfortunately, this kid who was going to break a record no longer has the record anymore, or didn't break the record. And I'm sorry, I'm not talking about this as efficiently as I should, but no, it's just kind of one of those things. Whereas after a while, you've gone through these kinds of things in life, and they make you stronger, they make you better. Like his experiences as a driver, being the only black driver in an all non-black field, that's what actually made him better. Like he took that negative energy that was coming at him the whole time, and he's able to make it better. Now, that doesn't only go for race; that goes for anything. You know what I mean? If people tell you no, and no, you can't swim the English Channel. No, you can't. You know what I mean? All those things, and you say to yourself, "Why not?" And you're inquisitive, and you keep trying, and that elevates all of society, not just yourself. It really tells all of society that we're capable of doing things. So, we have to say yes to the negative too, that it's all good. Negative, positive, use it as an experience and go ahead.
Yeah, use it as motivation as well, isn't it? And I think like using those, particularly if you've got people telling you can't do something or you're not good enough to do something, you use that as fuel for motivation to go and do it and to go and show those people, no, you were wrong. I am good enough and I can do it. And I think that's something I try and tell my children a lot. Like, obviously, sometimes you have to say no to them, and okay. But in terms of life and what they can achieve, I try to tell them that you can achieve whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But you've just got to have the motivation, the dedication, etc., to do it.
Yeah.
What about
Yes.
kind of just before we move into boxing?
Yeah.
I wanted to know, like, as a teenager, before you sort of came into boxing, maybe even in the early days of you starting boxing, were you a good teenager? Were you in trouble? Were you a bit of both? Somewhere in the middle?
Yeah. Well, growing up, I believe that I'd never really got into trouble. No, I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't truant. I wasn't, the cops would never have to come to my house or, things like that. I would do the inquisitive things, dumb things, of course, like anybody else. I remember there was this little island, like in Vancouver where we were in Steveston, there was like a little island that just maybe like 200-300 yards off the shore. And we do things like there was a boat with a hole in it, and we'd have to row across as quickly as possible to get to the, you know what I mean? So things like that, we jump off the sand dunes and, you could easily be buried and hurt yourself, but never anything that concerned hurt anybody else. It wasn't that. It was always, things, as a young, inquisitive kid, you could, you could hurt yourself, but life was pretty adventurous. Like, it was very slow and natural. And my mom put us in a really good place growing up. But once it started to get real, like once the competition kicked in, like in terms of boxing, and it became, life changed drastically, really quickly. And also at that time, I had left my mom, so I had to move in with my dad. And that was an absolutely different experience as well, you know what I mean, than what I had been living growing up. It's absolutely different.
That must have been a bit of taking a bit of acclimatizing as well. Obviously, if you hadn't seen him from sort of 7 to 15, that's you change as a child drastically between those ages. So having not seen your dad like a handful of times in that period, that must have been a bit different to go and live with him, and then obviously with your siblings as well. So tell me a bit about like that and the acclimatization to that, and then obviously progressing into training with boxing.
So when I moved in with my father, my older brother and older sister had actually moved out from him.
Okay.
So that was kind of it was just him and I, and it was very stark. It was very real, and mostly I was there because I wanted to box. When I left, at an age like 13, 14, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have anything I wasn't trained to do anything. I played American football, but I wasn't big enough. I was like 14 years old. I was 65 pounds still, and just like a rake, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I played football, but I knew that wasn't going to be my calling. So I remember one time talking to my older sister, Sandra, and she said, well, Dad has a gym down on Kingsway. You should go box like this. My mother and father didn't get along. My mother was not having it. She was like, okay, so if you're going to box, you're going to have to live with him, because I can't, you know what I mean, emotionally and everything that's going on. I just can't handle that. So I ended up going to live with my dad, and that was an absolute sort of like a real shock to the system, because I didn't grow up with his teachings, learnings, and the kind of way in which he loved and expected things was not something I was used to. So there was a whole lot of adapting going on there, and at the same time, it was learning how to fight. And I remember the first time I learned how to fight, and the first time I stepped in the ring, oh my God, like the whole ceiling caved in, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. Like, I remember I got in with this kid. His name was Nelson Ali, great last name, right? Muhammad.
Yeah.
Who was my hero. But so I get in the ring with him, and I should have known from the last name that this wasn't going to be good. The first thing he does, he comes in and he throws an overhand right, hits me on the side of the head, and everything went black. And all I heard was a scream, a loud, piercing scream. To this very day, I remember it. And this is like 40, 50 years ago. I don't know, 45 years ago. And it was my sister's voice. She was there at the gym, and it just piercing right through like, it was just, all the lights were out, and I hear this screaming. Then slowly I start coming to, and I see her, and I see everything going on. And it was like, okay, so this is what I'm going to have to do in order to make a name for myself in order to, better my circumstances. This is what I'm choosing to do for the rest of my life, because that's exactly the only reason why I went to live with my father. That was to fight. And my personality is not that of a fighter. I really am not. I don't really have an aggressive bone in me. I could talk a lot of crap and everything, but I'm not that kind of individual that's going to, I'm not physically intimidating. I'm not, I just don't have that short fuse, which kind of helps in a way, but it also hurts when it came to fighting as well. You don't have that natural killer instinct. You have to cultivate it. So anyway, it kicked off, and it was a very short amateur career. I just worked really hard, and the fact that my father was driving me, and the fact that I was self-driven as well, of course. We were kind of able to get through a very shaky initial period, and it gradually improved, in time. But
for sure. Yeah. So when you started with the boxing, was the aim from that very first time that you wanted to be a professional boxer, or was it more of a hobby and an interest that developed into that?
Yeah, no, I went into boxing specifically to become world champ. Like I remember growing up, and even the kids in my school kind of knew my father was a boxer at some point. So every once in a while somebody would mention that. But when Muhammad Ali fought, you know what I mean? That's as a young black kid, that's my idol. That's who I looked up to. We had the choice of like Muhammad Ali or O.J. Simpson in the 70s, and although I liked OJ as a running back, he wasn't like Ali kind of thing. And
of course,
unfortunately, we saw how it turned out for OJ. It's kind of like, So I'm sorry. Some of the residue of dementia still gets me as well.
No, you're good. You're good.
Can you repeat the
question? Good. So no, it was just made. Obviously, I asked if it was a hobby first, and then it went to.
Yeah, no, it was never a hobby. It was definitely about getting to, like, from day one, it was about being world champ. And my father kind of set the mode. He set the mood. He said, this is what you're going to have to do to get to this level. And this is how we're going to do it. And this is what you have to do. So every day after school, 3 hours till the gym was closed or whatever it was, and running, everything. We did everything that we could do in order to get the experience to get to the next level, because we were growing. I mean, I was really growing up in Vancouver, and Vancouver is not a big fight town. It's very, very small. So it's very limited, the competition you're going to see. But, and my amateur career was very limited as well. It was very short. It was, maybe I had like about a year and a half amateur. So I was 15, almost 16. So I was about 17, 18 when I turned pro for the first time. And I had maybe about 20 amateur fights. But in my amateur fights, I fought some incredible fighters, like Dale Walters, who was, he was like junior Olympic champion, like of the world at that time. And I fought him. I had like 4 fights. I lost a decision to him, but he was amazing. And that was a crazy experience to get that. I fought guys from down in Seattle who were, Mylan Watkins, who was also another junior Olympic champion. I fought him inside of like 7 fights. And I actually beat him. I don't know how. I think it was a gift to this very day. but I just don't know how that happened. I was like, okay, this is how it works. and I fought other kids that were like amateurs and that would be world champion later. So it was kind of like world professional champion. So it was really an amazing experience growing up. I had to kind of learn how to, walk real fast. And the fact that my father was my trainer enhanced the learning stage really fast. Like, you learn faster because all he does is, on the way to the gym, he's talking, drilling.
Yes.
When you get to the gym, you're drilling. When you get home, you're on the way home, you're drilling. So you're living it. It's 24/7. School isn't important. My grades weren't important. What I got was, you know what I mean? It didn't really matter. He wanted me to graduate, but if I wanted to forget school and box, he would have been like, yeah, I'm down with that. So that was the goal, because I think my father was a fighter as well, and I don't think he really accomplished everything that he wanted to, or that he thinks he could have in boxing. And so you kind of become a little bit of that as well. You become his get back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. Yeah, because like for me, I very much was not so much in the last couple of years because COVID and things kind of slowed things down. But two of my boys play soccer to a pretty high level.
Yeah,
and like I'm the same. I'd be on the way to school. We're talking about football. We're talking about what you need to do, what you need to work on on the way home from school, on the way to training. After training, where you did this good, you did this bad. Like you need to work on this, and it becomes like a constant thing. And I think it can be great, and it can be also there's another side to that, like as there is with everything, as you said earlier. There's night and there's day, and I think for particularly for the older boy, for me anyway, like I think I became a bit too much for him, and he kind of pulled away from it a bit in the end. Like he got a bit frustrated that that's all that we would talk about. And I was just trying to because I knew from my own experiences when I was younger that what cost me was that I didn't have the right attitude, and I had the ability, but I didn't have the dedication. And I was more interested in going out with my friends or missing training to go and see my girlfriend or whatever it may be. And, things that teenagers want to do rather than go training. With you, it sounds like you were thrown in at the deep end with your amateur career, and you fought some real killers like early on. Was there ever any sort of point where you were perhaps kind of looking at your friends who were not training and they're going out and things like that, and you were kind of missing that social side of it? Or were you even by that point just all in?
I think that at that point, I mean, I think you're absolutely right about with our children or us as kids. When that happens to us, we tend to, we look back, we kind of lament, and it doesn't feel like we're doing the right thing. But I think, where do I want to go with this? It's actually like the fact that the father and the son have to have that conflict is important. It's important to our growth. It's important to teach us how to handle issues. We handle them in the house good. We can handle them outside. We can handle outside a whole lot better without reverting to stuff that is crazy. It doesn't make sense. It's going to get us in trouble. So I also think that by a father or the mother not putting sensible pressure on the child, the kid is really missing out on something, because you need all aspects of the mental and the physical in order to compete on a global level with people. I mean, people who are great at something are obsessed. You know what I mean? They're obsessed with it. And so when you're looking at, Nadia Comaneci, who was, I remember like doing gymnastics and flying all over the place. She's been doing that since she's 6-7 years old. And now she's 15. So she's had, she's had, let's just say 10 years. She's been doing it, and she's been doing it every single day for hours every day in order to do that. How do you combat that? You can't combat that by going out with friends and partying and this and the other, you know what I mean? And living a leisurely, not some necessarily a leisurely life, but one of, I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. That never is. The champion is never that. The winner is never that. And the one thing that a child is always going to do once they get to a certain age, they're always going to come back and say, I don't understand why you didn't make me. You know what I mean? They always do that. They throw that back in your face. Oh my God, it's a killer. Yeah. I'm like, I just wanted you to enjoy your childhood and love life and da-da-da. And they're like, yeah, but now I'm like average. And I want to have that history, like the energy that goes into the energy and the experiences that you get from actually having to go to something and work for something. And whether you fall short or whether you attain it, that's character. That's that tapestry that's in your personality, and that's like the good stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I do. And that dedication which you need to become the best is something which you can't teach that. I think to a certain level, like you, of course, you're going to have parents and coaches who push you and occasionally will give you a kick up the backside and say, come on, get your head down. You're not working hard enough. But ultimately, you've got to want it. And I think that is the difference between perhaps the ones that nearly make it and the ones that make it. Yeah. So with your first professional fight, like how were you for nerves and stuff like this? Were you kind of amped up and nervous, or were you, I'm born to do this, let's go?
Yeah. At that point, it was interesting because we turned pro out of necessity. It wasn't out of like, I'm ready and I've had all the experiences and I'm cultivated. I mean, basically when I turned pro, I was 18 years of age. I'd been boxing for like almost 2 years, a year and a half. And I hadn't seen a lot of international competition. I mean, I'd seen some of the best guys from the States, and I'd competed in the Seattle Golden Gloves, being in the Pacific Northwest, but I hadn't seen the international competition. And the best fighters in the world are the guys that have seen the guys that are from Russia, from Cuba, from Germany, from Sweden, from England, from India. You know what I mean? They've seen the diversity of styles, and they've seen enough punches come at them that they know how to handle them. So now you're turning pro and you're going to be getting these diverse styles and you haven't seen them before. So it's kind of like early, but your love of the sport and that desire to win masks so much. You know what I mean? It's that same old saying, ignorance is bliss. I haven't seen it before. And all I'm thinking is, as soon as I hit this guy, you know what I mean? He's going to feel it. And if I hit him, he's going to feel it. If he feels it, I can win. And so, you know, you have, it's kind of like, you know, the kids that they put in the army or in then whatever it is in the armed forces are the kids that are like 17, 18, because they don't know anything about pain. They don't know anything about being hurt and what all the rest of that. They're gung-ho. They just have, like, you know what I mean? You're hopped up. You got your everything's running through your body, the adrenaline, it's nuts, and you just like, you're in it, you're in the fight, and that's all you want to do as a young male. That's just the way the hormones, you know, that's the way everything's affected. So you're in there, you're in the hunt, and you're doing what you can do, and you don't understand the frustrations of why this isn't happening. And, you know, you don't understand what's happening with your body or what this other person's trying to do to you, but you figure it out. You have to figure it out on the fly. Like in the ring, you figure it out. And again, it's like that a little bit more instant adaptation or you die kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. It's a big, I think I look around the world, particularly I think in combat sports, is one of those sports, boxing and MMA, and even, you know, like Muay Thai, kickboxing, things like this. I believe that those are the sports where you're learning on the job more than any other sport. Yeah. Because I watched the standard, particularly I've noticed in MMA in the last probably 3 to 4 years, the standard, even in the shows below the UFC, like so in the UK and Europe, you've got like Cage Warriors, maybe Bellator, people like One Championship, like the standard is so high. Everybody is so good. And it's years ago, you could be if you were a world-class striker, you could be okay at wrestling and grappling and get by, or vice versa. But these days, if you're not world-class at everything, you're going to get found out real quick. And I think similar to boxing, because the facilities and the training places, coaches, the teams around the world, there's so many different options now for people to go and train boxing or football or MMA and things like that. It brings the standard up generally. And I think it's just such a high level, and you've got to learn with every fight or you will get found out. You went on, you know, to hold championships, to go. You were undefeated for a very long time. I think was it 23-0? You went.
I got to 23-0. Yeah,
that is quite incredible, really, when you think of it. 23 fights, professional, and like you said, you didn't feel that you were ready to turn professional.
No, I wasn't. Yeah,
but you still went 23-0. So I think that says a lot about your your mindset, your ability.
You know
in
what
that
really helped in that? I'm sorry.
Go on.
You know what
Yeah,
really
go on.
helped in that? My mindset was like, I remember growing up, and again, like I wasn't naturally myself confident, but I borrowed some of Ali's confidence, like watching him do it. Like you would almost like you would hypnotize yourself. Like I would emulate, or I would memorize his banter, like the way he talked and his feelings. I'm like, okay, so that's the way you're supposed to feel, and you just repeat it to yourself. And it's crazy how you can do that, and you really do end up like believing in yourself. You don't have that same core and substance, because it doesn't come from you innately. Like it isn't something that you're born with. Unlike with Ali, obviously it's something he was born with, but it does give you the fuel to get to that next level, or at least get yourself started. And then you're going to find out through your own experiences. And so, yeah, having those people that serve as inspirations are so important. You know what I mean? There's more than one way to get there. Like Ali's way is one way, but that isn't the only way to get there. And it's knowing and letting the next generation know there's more than one way to get there. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something really to be said about a positive mindset and believing in yourself to do things, because I've read this book several times now called The Secret. And it's not generally something which I would read. It's a kind of about the law of attraction and believing in yourself and things like, you know, the power of kind of positivity. That's not something that I would have read previously, but it was recommended to me, and I don't know if I buy into it quite as much as some people do, but what I do buy into is that what you put out will come back. And I think having a belief in yourself and being positive and how you deal with things makes a difference.
When you say what you put out will come back, what do you exactly mean by that?
So in terms of maybe the positive energy you put out, the way you treat people, the way you go about your business, the way you deal with things, which maybe when the pressure's on, when it's really stressful and things are looking down, like if you can bring yourself to have a little bit of a smile and kind of say, look, you know, at the end of the day, you said something actually a bit earlier on about your mum. I forgot what you said now, but it was something about like life being important and things like that. And I think, like, as I've got older, my outlook has changed drastically. I think becoming a father also changes the way you view things, because you're responsible for other people and you're not just worried about yourself. But I just feel like that if I put out a positive energy, if I deal with things in the most positive way that I can, and my wife will tell you, like, I am naturally quite I'm quite full of cynicism. I'm probably quite negative, I could be quite antisocial in some ways. Like I'm quite happy to stay at home on my own and things like that. Like but I just feel like if I can go through life being a bit more positive and a bit deal with things in a positive way, then maybe life will be easier and happier. And I guess, I don't know, it's a difficult one for me to explain, because it's like with that book, like I was saying, like it's not something that I ever would have envisaged myself reading. And I've read it several times over now because I felt like it helped me and it helped the way I looked at things. But I'm so conscious that with time and stuff, because you've just got you've been through so much, you've got so much interesting stories. So don't want to talk about me too much. That's what I was going to ask you. So you went 23-0. Obviously we can't go through like fight by fight, but is there a fight in that first 23 where you look back and it feels particularly special to you?
Yeah, I had a number of fights that I thought really helped my character, and you know, they say like when you get hit and you go through hardships in a fight, that you learn. And it's been my finding that's not true. You don't. What you do is you've had every time you go to the well in boxing, every time you get knocked down and you get hurt and you have to come back and to beat an individual, it's like when, the proverbial well, and there's the water in the well and you have to drop the bucket in there and you have to pull the water up. Every time you pull the water up and you nourish yourself, there's less water in the well. So as a fighter, every time you have to go dig down deep and you're hurt, you get knocked down, you're cut, whatever it is, and you have to come back and beat the individual, there's less of you the next fight than there was. It may not be noticeable because the guy's got a certain style that you easily can adapt to or whatever, but there's less of you. It's just a natural thing. It's a certain part of you has been eaten, and you may have a surplus of it, but after a while, you're not going to be able to go back down to that well anymore. And that's one thing that happens with fighters that don't have full control of their abilities yet. And I didn't have full control of my abilities when I jumped in with some of the guys that I jumped in there with. Like one guy I fought was, I was still a welterweight, like 147. I could make junior welterweight. And I was fighting another guy that was 15 pounds up from me and who sweated down to make that weight. And I fought him in my fourth or fifth fight. And he was a southpaw, and he was a very recognized amateur, but as a professional, he'd only had one fight. And he had just finished losing a decision to a really good fighter, Dick Tiger Walker, in Madison Square Garden. They brought him to Vancouver to fight me in my fifth fight. I hadn't fought in a year, and I'm fighting this guy. And it was like one time he hit me, and I threw a right hand, and I missed. And he pulled back and he dropped the left hand on my ear and broke my eardrum. And this whole thing I remembered like vividly, like yesterday. My head felt like it exploded. I sort of pulled back, and then I pulled forward again. He hit me with another one and he dropped me. And that was the first time as a professional I'd gotten dropped. I remember being on the ground, and I remembered the air rushing by my ear because he'd opened up, he'd popped my eardrum. And so I'm hearing this rush of water, of air, everything, and I hear it mixed in with, you know what I mean? Your consciousness is coming back to you. So people's voices are turning on again, and everything's sort of like winding up slow. And I get up and I look into my corner, and I see my dad talking to me. I'm like, no, like this. And the referee's grabbing my arm, and I'm like, no, I'm okay. I thought they were giving me a 10 count. I thought they were saying the fight was over. So naturally my instincts taking over. And it took me a round, and I got my mind back together. And then the next round I came back and I really made him pay for it. And I ended up stopping him in that fight. But, so you can go through hardships, but like after that, there was definitely less of me than there was in the future. And that's early. That's starting early on. And sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that is and we'll go on to talk about, an injury which you suffered later on in your career, but like a burst eardrum is not pleasant. So to get up after being, floored and getting yourself to be able to come round, but also still having to deal with the rushing and the pain and the air. Yeah. Like, how painful was it in terms of, like, I know you had the sensation of the air, but from when you got up, got yourself together, and then went on to win that fight, like how much pain were you in with that eardrum burst? Was it the adrenaline kind of masked it?
The adrenaline masked it, and it's not, because I don't believe there are any real nerve endings there. So I didn't really feel any pain, for instance, but there's the knowledge of knowing that you're vulnerable.
Yes.
And now how do you defend yourself when this guy's going to come at you like he's coming at you like a beast? This is like his chance to end the fight. And this is what he's been waiting for, and he's fully equipped to do that. So now you're in survival mode. You were pushing the fight, you're leading, you were like, and all of a sudden, it's another side of it. We flip the coin, and now you're being the hunter is being hunted. How do you handle that? It's an emotional, mental kind of pressure that is unlike anything else I've ever felt before. Yeah, like you really feel vulnerable, and then you're also know that people are looking at you. So there's that. people are looking at you with a little bit less than what they used to. You know what I mean? You're, as a man, you've shown a vulnerability. Now, other people think they can do the same to you or hunt you that same way. I mean, it's interesting. I know with Ben, I've been on his in conversation with him before, and we've included other people, and other people actually believe just because Mike Tyson knocked out Bruce Seldon, for instance, in a round, they think that also means they could knock him out in a round.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
It may have been like relatively easy for Mike because he put in all that work and he did so many years and he hits that hard. It wouldn't take him even an eighth of the time it took him to knock this guy out than to knock you out. And I don't know, it's really interesting when you look at the dynamics and how we see things as human beings. And my experiences in boxing have really opened up my eyes to my human nature and human nature in general. Like I see it. I'm able to approach issues differently now since I've retired, and I look at boxing, and I look at my boxing experience. It shows the beautiful and the real ugly side of people, and it doesn't matter if they're blood relation or they're, you know what I mean. Absolutely, just in terms of professional management, whatever it is, you just see the diversity of human beings, which is, I guess, in the long run, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm sure during the 80s in boxing, you met some interesting characters, both good and bad.
Yeah.
Tell me, like one of the, I don't know, like the worst kind of examples of that during your experience in boxing generally, in terms of people you met and things like that. Because obviously, from the outside looking in, you hear all sorts of stories about corruption and different things, over the years. But I think these days there seems to be a little bit more sort of regulation in terms of things like that. Like, did you ever meet any kind of shady characters, I guess I'm asking, through like boxing during the day?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like in boxing, you could, I don't know, close your eyes and spin around, and when you open your eyes again, there's going to be somebody that in front of your face that's not the best side of it. Boxing is like the Wild West still to this very day. Anybody can come in and say they're your trainer, your manager, and get a license and start training a fighter and give a fighter advice in the corner, and they've never fought in their life. You know what I mean? You don't have that in any other professional sport. The tennis players don't do it. And
no.
Soccer players don't do it. Basketball players. There's no other sport in the world, I guess MMA or the fight sports, but you wouldn't have it in karate either or in judo. These guys are like crazy experience. Yeah. But in boxing, things that sort of like come from, it's almost like a street mentality. That's what you're going to get. And so there's a lot of that. I remember when my father was no longer my manager, we went separate ways, and I had management come in, new management, and there were people my father knew, and I didn't know he knew them, but he knew them, or they were brought to the table. And he said they wanted to take over my managerial contract. I was like, well, I have less than a year in my father and my managerial contract, so I don't see why I have to, you know what I mean? Because he's going to get money out of it. I'm not. But, I was like, okay, my father's not going to be earning money with me anymore, so I'll accept these people as my managers. Well, I didn't do due diligence on the situation, but my managers were in a pretty good, were in an influential position, I guess, in society, or they had money and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Well, turns out they were, see what happened. About a year after I had retired from boxing, my last fight being Tommy Hearns, the lead manager, the guy who funded the whole thing, he was driving into his home and he ended up getting shot in the driveway. and it's like he owned the biggest mansion on the East Coast. Like it was in Long Island. I forget the name of it, but anyway, it was a beautiful place. And he ended up getting shot, and he ended up not dying. He did get shot in the head. He did not die.
Jesus.
He fully recovered. And newspaper articles and some police something, they asked to speak to me because they figured, because my last fight, I didn't get the money I should have gotten. I let it go. I just like, okay, I know what this is. I'm not going to fight about this. I don't need this in my life. I'm going to start a new career. But they wanted to know if everything was okay between us, because I didn't get my last paycheck. So is that reason enough for me to go ahead and shoot this guy in the head? And they never found the guy who actually shot him. So, so I'm sitting here, I'm like, how am I, I mean, I guess it would make sense to some people because it's, it's $250,000. So people have an issue with it, but so things like that happened a lot. I had, trainers in my corner that I fought with them. They were in my corner for a couple of years, and we were really close. We were real tight. They had a falling out with my father. The very next fight, I see him in the corner of the guy I'm fighting on national TV, and I'm looking at him. He's pointing his finger at me, and he's like, "That's who you got to knock out right there. That's it." And he's talking all sorts of stuff, and I'm just looking at this guy, and I'm like, "Wow, really? Is that just
no loyalty
side of human beings?" Like I wouldn't even expect loyalty. I would expect just like, isn't there like a semblance of decency? Like, I understand that you had a rift with my father and you're no longer, but at what point in your mind don't you say to yourself, like, this doesn't feel good, it isn't right? I know maybe I'm making some money out of it, but you know what I mean? Even if you would just shut up and just be in the corner and keep his head down and give him water or give him advice or whatever it is. But for him to actually like, they're announcing the thing and he's pointing at me saying, that's the guy you got to knock out. And after so many like beautiful moments we shared together over the years, regardless of what happened between my father and you, I don't get how a human being could do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I approached him recently. Because I mean, this is like 20 years later. I never forget anything. I never let it go. I mean, I am okay with it. And I said to him, his name was Victor, and I said, Victor, how could you do that? Like, what? He goes, but I got to eat and my money. I said, yeah, but dude, I don't get how you. Like, where does that come from? And it really just comes down to an individual's nature. It's like knowing the natures you're with, and people will do whatever they have to do to survive. I understand that. And they'll do it not necessarily the way in which you'd want them to do it. That's kind of like wishful thinking on my half. But nobody ever really told me that, I didn't learn that growing up. I didn't know that people were capable of doing that. You know what I mean? I didn't even see it in the movies. I mean, it's not like it wasn't there, but I don't know. It was a very strange thing, and it made me feel, I didn't feel the best way out of it because of it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised whatsoever. Michael, just to sort of finish us off on boxing, and then I'll kind of speak to you about the other things that you've got going on in your life. Obviously, your career was ended due to a serious eye injury.
Yes.
But just before we touch on that, I wanted to talk to you. You fought Frank Tate for the IBF middleweight championship, and you went into that as a 2-1 favorite. And lost quite convincingly.
Yes.
How did that affect? Like, how did you deal with that from a mental side of things, like outside of the ring? Because obviously you were unbeaten. Mm-hmm. This was the kind of the big title fight.
Yes.
And not only did it not kind of go well, it was a pretty devastating loss. That must have been difficult to cope with, because that was obviously, like, at that point, that was the big fight. That was the one you've been waiting for.
Yeah, well, that was that was supposed to be the crowning achievement, and it was after the network campaign, and I think the reason why I was able to accept it it didn't debilitate me emotionally. And I think it's because in reality, I kind of expected it in a way. And the reason, and I'll tell you why I expected it. There were just so many things that weren't lining up correctly that I almost didn't see how I could win. Like it's just something in yourself. There's physically things weren't lining up properly, emotionally, relationship-wise. Everything was, especially in retrospect, I say it now, but nothing good was happening for, you know what I mean? So superficially, yeah, it was great. I was on network TV. I was, you know what I mean? The Nielsen's ratings were off the chart, and, you're recognized. You're not paying for your restaurant bill or anything. Like people are just treating you like, you're the second coming almost. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing, but you know that things just aren't going right. And I knew also in my mind, and I've said it before, that Frank Tate, he was a U.S. Olympian. He won the gold medal. I'd never seen anything like him before. Like the subtleties of his. So what I was saying about when I was an amateur, like I didn't have the extensive amateur background. So I hadn't seen the kind of thing that he was. His timing was different. The way in which his punches came in were different from what I was used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the sparring, which you're supposed to do, like you try to get someone to emulate the fighter's style that you're going in against. That's what sparring is about. There was none of that. There was no going over the fight tapes. There was just absolutely nothing that allowed me to be confident in a win. Like innately within my soul, I didn't feel that confidence. So when the first bell rang, I'm like, okay, we're here to fight, so we're going to fight. But everything I did just felt ineffective. He's the one person in my life that I fought and who I'd never really hit. Like every person that I've lost to, they've at least gotten a concussion out of fighting with me. You know what I mean? Like concussed. I've wobbled them, or I've hurt them, or I've dropped them, or something. If you beat me, you're gonna lose a few brain cells as well. You know what I mean? Like it's not just gonna be me. I'm not the only one there. But he absolutely skated home free, and that just wasn't me. And yeah, he just did things differently, and he had a great style. He beat a lot of guys, and he was a great fighter. He was very, very talented, but I did think I could have done more in that fight. And it was just absolutely frustrating. I'm generally not one to show emotion, but when I left that ring, I just I was distraught. I was, you know what I mean? I mean, and when I got home, like any these fighters, football players, whatever it is, we're distraught when we lose. But to be so systematically just disassembled, and for a man not even to get a nosebleed out of it, it's like we fought 15 rounds. Like this cat could have done another 30 rounds. You know what I mean? I mean, I wasn't breathing either, but I was defeated, and I couldn't find the answer to hit him. I couldn't hit him. I could not hit him clean, and it was one of the most frustrating. It's like that dream you have when you're falling and you never hit the ground. This is what it was. I was punching and I wasn't hitting him, and I was like, "How does this happen?" And he absolutely he schooled me. I thought the first 5 rounds were competitive, but then after that, he just hit another gear, and I didn't have that gear to catch up to him or make it competitive.
Indeed, yeah. I was really fascinated to hear you talk about that, because like I said, you had been unbeaten, and that was the big sort of, like you say, the crowning moment, or hoped to be, and it didn't go your way. You mentioned your last fight was against the legend that is Tommy Hearns.
Oh, sorry, but before we go there, can I ask you
a
quick question? Sorry. One of the reasons, I think sometimes also you get caught up in your own celebrity.
Okay.
Right? So this is a number of things that happen too. And I remember I always used to chill with Mike Tyson. We were at the fights, and all the other fighters, and this, that, and the other. And you there's a big fight on, they call you up into the ring and you get into the ring in Madison Square Garden and everyone cheers you on and all that kind of stuff. And I remember having a conversation with Mike and a few other fighters, and Mike would be like, "Oh, I saw your last fight with Durrell, man. Like this guy, Troy Durrell, we went toe to toe, and it was on NBC and all the rest of it." And he was like, "Yo, that was a great fight. I loved it, da, da, da." And so, here's Mike Tyson telling you that kind of stuff. And everyone's telling you it's macho. It was exciting. It was like thrilling and you look great and you hit him really hard and this, that, and the other. And so all of a sudden your mind is thinking, yeah, that's right. It was. And I was good. And I did do that. And it's like all of a sudden you're being taken out of your own game. Like the accolades people are giving you, even though they're meant as a good thing, are actually destructive to the way you actually do things, which is really wild. Like as human beings, that happens to us every day in life. Like people tell us, I don't know. I just think that I listened. There was a way in which I should have done it, and I listened to this voice inside of me that, like, whether it's ego or whether it's like I wanted to please people instead of wanting to please myself, and instead of doing it the way I should have done it. Those are some of the traps we fall into, because there's only one way to win, but there's 100 ways to lose. One way to win, 100 ways to lose. And that's when I look back in retrospect and I think about that. It's like, man, if I sometimes wish I had that kind of knowledge or control, or even, you know what I mean?
Just that mentality when you were a bit younger.
Yeah. I mean, because there are some fighters that they just don't let that get in their way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure,
like Floyd Mayweather, for instance. Look at, like, for that, he's excellent. He doesn't care what anyone says. He's a lot of people will consider him one of the most boring champions ever. A lot of people say he doesn't throw any punches. He just defense and slips and looks fancy and jabs a guy and just doesn't knock anyone out. The guy's the most accomplished, or maybe financially accomplished, professional fighter to ever live, and probably will be for a long time. You know what I mean? Just because of his way of saying, this is how I'm doing it, and anyone else's opinion, they're not doing it. They're not catching the punches. They're not, there's no sufferance in what they're doing. They just want to see my brain cells on the canvas. That's not the way I'm going into this, and that's not the way I'm going to leave it. So that kind of thing is like deserves a whole lot of admiration, and it's something that I realized in retrospect, and I wish that I would have done it a different way. So I'm sorry for the
that's good. I think like for all like successful athletes in whatever sport they're doing, you have so many people telling you how good you are, almost. Yes. And I see a lot these days where people have got like entourages of people, and all those people are there just telling them how great they are, saying yes to everything, getting them whatever they want.
Yes.
And I do think it must be so difficult to remain focused and have the same motivation that you had pre-success. It's just human nature. It doesn't matter who you are, because if everyone's telling you how great you are, you believe it, don't you? Okay, so Michael, just on that, the Tommy Hearns fight was your last fight.
Yeah, and, absolutely. You start to cut corners. Yes. Yeah, so the Tommy Hearns fight was my last fight, and at that point, just getting to the fight itself was, to get in there and to be like whole, that was a challenge in itself. Originally, like I had double vision in my eye from '86. It was a sparring incident that happened in Gleason's gym, and it was madness. So my father was training me at that time. He was this young kid. He was 6-0, and he was super middleweight. And I was just coming in. I'm from Vancouver, and I'm living in New York, and I'm not really happy at this point. This is when I first landed in New York, and I wasn't really motivated. And so I get into the ring. I'm sparring with this kid, and we're just supposed to throw jabs and move around. So I'm moving around with this kid, and I'm bored. I'm not even paying attention, which is the wrong thing. It's just, you're a fighter. Everyone that gets in the ring with you is looking to take your head off. You got to know that. I get in the ring with this kid. All of a sudden, he throws a right uppercut out of nowhere. Bam! He hits me under my lip. And he, when I tell you I had like, what do they call that thing? That alien with the mouth that opens up.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, so Predator. So like my lips split like Predator, like this. And it was nasty and blood was gushing out. And I went like this. The blood's gushing out. I look and I catch it in my glove. As the blood's pouring into my glove and I'm looking up, this kid comes with another uppercut and hits me right in the eye. Bow! My head goes back like this. I look and I'm seeing two all of a sudden. I'm seeing two. Blood is leaking out my mouth. Then I see this figure rushing into the ring. And I see it's my dad. And I go to grab him. And he sort of like pushes me off. And with his bare fist, he hits this kid in the mouth. Bam! And he splits his lip. And this is in Gleason's gym. So there's like, you know, Donnie Lalonde, Iron Barkley, Jerry Cooney. Like everyone's going nuts in the gym. They're looking at this like, oh my God, this is madness. People are jumping in the ring. And this kid, again, he's got a split lip. We're both bleeding like crazy. And we had to, at that point, you know, I could no longer be at Gleason's for a while. It was kind of like, it was madness. But so I almost forgot where I'm going with this story. I relived it.
So like that was the start of the double vision, and
that was the start of the double vision. Yeah. So from there, I had to try to fuse the two images back together, but my eyes were at that point, they were compromised, and it was never the same from there. And so even the fights I fought on network TV, I was like maybe like number 9, 10 in the world from there. But if I fought Southpaws, it was cool because this part of my vision, what I could fuse it to single, but anything from this side over, so where left hooks are coming at me, stuff like that, it was like I was really, really like it was. Which one do you duck? That was the problem. So when it was a gamble. So when I fought Hearns, fortunately, his best punch was his right hand. His jab was also his best punch, but the left hook wasn't really his thing. But that right hand was a laser, would come right down the pike. So I was able to keep him on that side, but getting to the fight was difficult because I had to really watch my sparring because my eyes were really weak at that point. They'd been compromised, and anything could turn it into like it would get so bad I wouldn't be able to take the fight. Or, you know, the athletic commission would stop me or whatever. But fortunately, when I got to the fight, there was one, the doctor was Frank Doggett, who was the Atlantic City doctor at that time. We were fighting at the Trump Taj Mahal. We just opened it up. And so the fight's on Showtime. And he said to me, he had me by the side and to the side in the room, and he goes, "What happened to your eyes?" And I had to tell him the story. And I was like, "Don't pull a fight." And we had this conversation. And I guess he could have stopped the fight, but that would have been millions of dollars you know what I mean? And so he's like, "Okay, if you want to take it," but, you know, I kind of like begged him to let it go on, but I don't think I really had to beg him for some reason. I don't think they were going to put at that point. It's like, I was the sacrificial lamb anyway. I was supposed to go in there and Hearns was supposed to toast me in a round or something like that.
Okay.
But I was working with Angela Dundee at the time, and Hector Roca was my trainer, and those two are really great boxing minds. The thing was, here's the biggest thing about me, and this affected me from when I was a kid to when I was an adult, and even right now to today, exactly. I am not absolutely capable of making that decision that I need to make by myself. Like, it's not that I can't make the decision, it's just I don't do it with the same kind of fortitude that it should be done with. For instance, when I was fighting Hearns, you know, I've fought enough times by now. I have to have that belief in myself that I have the instinct. I have the knowledge and the instinct and the experience that I know what I'm feeling in the ring, and I know when I have to shift gears. So the plan going into the fight with Tommy Hearns was, you know, move around, give him movement the first couple of rounds, and then start taking the fight to him. You know what I mean? Start slowing it down and going in. Angela Dundee, he put the strategy together, and that was all well and good. It makes perfect sense. Nobody wants to get starched in the first round, and Hearns is the strongest early. So you want to take him into like mid to deep waters. The bell rings, you come out, move around, good. 2 rounds, good. 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, and he was telling me, I just want you moving. I just want you up on your wheels. Move around. Don't engage. And something inside me is saying it's not right, but that part of me that listens, that obeys, that, you know what I mean? That's not being overridden. I'm not overriding that. And I don't, to this very day, I didn't understand why. And so Hector in the 6th round goes, Angelo, it's 6 rounds later. You got 6 rounds to go. And, we can't win this fight. We got to knock him out now. You got to let the kid fight. So Angelo's like, okay, we got to fight now. Let's go. So at that point is where the fight starts. For the first 5 rounds or so, it was just movement and finding the range and slipping and frustrating him and making him miss. But my nature, I didn't listen to my nature. And one thing all athletes, hunters, predators have to do is listen to their instincts, because that's the stuff that's gonna allow you to win. You know what I mean? It could bring you to a loss as well, yes. But it's the fact that you did it yourself. You made that decision yourself, and you can live with it.
Yeah.
When you don't make that decision yourself, you relive that thing over and over. To this very day, I relive it. I feel it emotionally. I feel it right now. It was like, and that's a part of my character that I wrestle with every day. And that's one thing like I notice about fighters. Fighters fight their personality. They fight who they are. Like, well, some guys are tricky and sneaky. Some guys are aggressive and obvious. And some guys are, you know what I mean? Grandiose and braggarts and all the rest of that kind of stuff. We all fight our personality. And we try to, in the ring, funnel it and focus it to the right, so it does right by us. You know what I mean? Because yes, this other guy's capable and he's a good opponent, but the thing is, if you know yourself, that fight is going to be so much easier when you know yourself than when you don't.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing to listen to, my friend. The injury, so you had the Tommy Hearns fight.
Yeah.
It sounds as if you knew there was something kind of going on with your eye before the fight, and you'd kind of worked around it. Mm-hmm. Did you know that it was like a career ender before the fight, or did you think that you would go, you'd go to the hospital or whatever and get it fixed, and that would be it?
I after the Hearns fight was when I had the management issue with the guys who weren't exactly boxing guys, and so they more or less kept that purse. And I never fought. I fought one more fight after that, and that's when I knew it was over. And I fought that fight out of necessity. Hearns should have been my last fight because I had surgery after that fight, and it wasn't good. But in reality, when I initially had the eye injury, if I would have told the athletic commission that I had that problem, it would have ended in '86. I wouldn't have gotten to 1990. So what I would do is, like, when they have you read a chart, you cover the eye and read, and then you cover the eye and read. My problem wasn't the quality of my vision. I had 20/20 vision, but I had 20/20 vision like you know what I mean? Like, I see one level, then I see another level. So I could read the numbers here and I could read the numbers there. And so that was the extent of their medical checkup in those days. I don't know if they're different now.
Yeah, I'm sure it's different
but
now.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But they weren't thinking about double vision, all the rest of that kind of stuff. So it was and a lot of fighters, like I think Errol Spence, he come back from a double vision. There were a number of fighters that Billy Joe, didn't he have he fought Canelo and elbow fracture and stuff like that. Yeah. So what's going to happen afterwards? I mean, maybe today they've perfected the surgery and they can get everything level again. But in my day, they didn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, it's a nasty, nasty injury. So so you were told your career was over. And to many people, we've seen many fighters over the years, when their career is over, when it's all said and done, they do struggle. They can have problems with alcohol. They can have problems with other things because they missed the the competition, they missed the day-to-day training, all that different stuff. It seems, and I'm sure you'll tell me if I'm wrong, but like it seems like you didn't miss a step in terms of you obviously, like I mentioned at the start of the show, the godfather of boxing fitness. But like, you know, you went into boxing fitness, you've done work with like TV and film companies and projects. Like, was that something that you had always plans to do at post-fight career, or was that just something that you created via necessity because the career was over?
Absolutely necessity. I was in New York. I was living in New York, and I'm not an American citizen, so I couldn't take a legitimate job. I was there on a special visa as a fighter. I could no longer fight, so I could no longer make any money. So I was pretty much like, I was at that level where I was going to be homeless, otherwise I'm going to have to go back to Vancouver and you know, start life over again there. But fortunately, I came up with this idea of, you know, boxing for fitness, and I actually worked with a chiropractor friend of mine who was great, who was really very, very supportive and help. I mean, no matter what in life, you just need people. You know what I mean? We're social animals, and we need the love and the help of people when we're down, no matter what, or even when we're up, and you just need people around you that are good and that are and their intentions are good, and it helps you heal. So I started working with some of his clients, and then I started working with other doctors' clients, and I came up with this concept of a group fitness boxing class, which they'd never had before. And that caught popularity. And then all of a sudden it was like Equinox, they just had one Equinox at the time. And I was on 76 in Amsterdam. And they saw me, like I was in the New York Post, which was a big paper in New York at the time. And I was training these celebrities in boxing fitness, and they were like, "Oh my God, we want to have you over here." So I went to Equinox, and that's when it started to get, you know, into, this is the first time I'd ever been in a legitimate fitness club. So it started, you know, I started to work with some very interesting people. I started teaching a big group class, and it just gained in terms of popularity. I was on like Good Morning America and CBS Morning Show, and then all of a sudden I was choreographing a play on Broadway, like by great directors. Then all of a sudden, like Michael Mann called me up and asked me to work on the Ali movie with Will Smith and all the rest of that kind of stuff, and it just, you know, and Spike Lee and everyone, it just kept going from there. So after that, it was like Hugh Jackman. I trained Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal and got them in shape for their movies, and Mark Wahlberg and Chris Hemsworth. I work with Chris Hemsworth now on his app.
I was going to say Chris Hemsworth is his app. Like, I think that goes to show, like, not just like, because as a former professional athlete, of course, you know about fitness and things like that. But what it goes to show is that what you've created works, because people like Michael Mann and Chris Hemsworth and Mark Wahlberg and all of these people, they keep coming back to work with you because it works, because you're good at, you're great at what you do. And I just think, look, Michael, I could sit here and I could speak to you for about 4 hours and happily just talk about you, talk about your life, talk about life generally. I really could. And I wish that we had more time. And I'm already conscious that I've gone over what we kind of agreed with time. So I don't want to cut off your story sort of thing, but I kind of feel like I need to. But like, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and just listening to your story, and it's been absolutely incredible. A real treat, I got to say.
Thank you.
What I like to finish with is kind of one question. Everybody interprets it different. Everybody answers it differently, and that's why I like it. That's why I like to finish on it. So I'm not going to explain it any further. You can interpret and answer as you like. But what is the meaning of life?
I feel the meaning of life is to give life. Like, the purpose of life for me is to give life. I can't see it any other way. Like, you know, so I kind of feel we're here because of like the chemicals and the world shifting and the tectonic plates moving and creating and all that kind of stuff. And we're a life form that's kind of like evolved. And so the purpose of life is to live life. The purpose of life is to create more life. That is the purpose of it. And everything else that happens from there is kind of like, you know, the emotions that we feel, you know, when we see the beautiful emotions, they're just so natural. Every emotion is natural, whether it's hate, anger, violence, and whether it's love and caring and companionship. All those things, they're all absolutely understandable and normal and natural, and it's just kind of like it's when it's about living. I mean, we just experience. Those are the things we're going to experience, and it's how we accept those energies coming at us that we do best. Like if you're able to, like, when things come at you and they're hard, if you can kind of like put your bulletproof vest on and take it, that's the best way. You know, you're going to get hit sometimes. Life is a fight. You know what I mean? Life is a fight. You're going to get hit. You're going to have to get back up. You know, that's the same analogy that we all use, but you know, you're going to get hit. It's what you do with that energy after you've been hit. What do you do with it? You necessarily, there are times when you should just necessarily walk away. Yes. You know what I mean? You do not have to make every wrong right in life. That's one of the worst things we can do, because we stay in that one spot forever. And what we need to do is, you get hit, hopefully you learn something from it, you know, but just keep it moving. That's the most important thing. I like to say quickly before you leave, like, you know, when things are still, like it's static, nothing's moving. The only way things can get better is by movement, constant movement, and changing your, you know, that changes kind of like the neuroplasticity of your brain. Like you just have
for sure.
You have to keep moving. You have to keep stimulating your brain, and we have to have, at times you do have to have that short memory, and just like that was that. This I'm not gonna stay in that. I need to move to a positive place. I need to move to a better place, and that's what life's all about to me.
Beautifully said, mate. You got to keep moving forward. I think it's really important to do that. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Please do subscribe, all that good stuff, and of course check out Michael's website. I'll put links to everything in the description below for the so people can check out your site and everything like that. But listen, Michael Olajide, it has been my absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me for this week's My Story.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, dude.
Glad we met. Thank you, Ben.